What's going on, guys? In this video, I'm giving you my predictions for the 2022-23 NHL season, and at the end, we're actually going to compare that to an NHL 23 sim. So starting off here, guys, the Pacific Division. I feel like this one, not too many surprises here, probably. San Jose Sharks, they're last place. I feel like, they're one of the teams in the hunt for Connor Bedard. I feel like their defense now without Brent Burns. Carlson, obviously, injury plagued. Vlasic's quite old. Farrell didn't look as good as he has in past last year. They're probably going to be at the bottom of that division. Anaheim Ducks up next at number 7. Seattle even at 6. I feel like both those teams are in a similar spot. They're not terrible. They have some good young pieces, but still a while away from being a true contender. LA Kings next at number 5. So they were in the playoffs last year. I see them falling a bit back here. Definitely if I had to give them a point total, it wouldn't be anything too bad. Probably mid to high 80s, maybe even low 90s and just missing. For me, though, just better teams in the West, and I think the Kings are going to fall a bit short there. Kevin Fiala addition obviously going to help them out, but I don't think it'll be enough. Vancouver Canucks up next, number 4. Obviously, that line is the playoff line, so I have them falling just short as well. I think they finish high 80s, low 90s, and it's just shy of a playoff spot there. I think they made a couple nice additions. I really like Thatcher Demko as their starting goalie. Big fan of Peterson, Miller, Besser, Horvat. That forward core there, of course, Quinn Hughes on the back end, but again, I think they're just better teams in the West. That's why I think Vancouver's going to fall just short. Now, in regards to the playoff teams here, guys, we got the Vegas Golden Knights at number 3. I think they bounced back after last year, getting to the playoffs. They were just riddled with injuries last year. Hopefully, they can stay healthy this year, and if they do, I see them being back in the playoffs. Obviously, Robin Lehner's already hurt, probably out for the whole year, but Logan Thompson didn't look too bad last year in his place. They also have Laurent Brossoit, and they also brought in somebody else who I'm missing right now. So they got 3 options there, ride the hot hand. I think they have a solid defense still. Forwards, of course, Eichel, Stone. Even after losing Pacioretty, I feel like they're still a pretty solid team, and they're going to make the playoffs, in my opinion. Next up, Calgary at 2. So I feel like the Pacific Division is all about the Battle of Alberta. Those are the top 2 teams. Obviously, Calgary, they lost Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, and they honestly somehow might have gotten better afterwards, bringing in Jonathan Huberdeau, Nazem Kadri, and Mackenzie Weegar. I think Huberdeau and Gaudreau are pretty much, equal players. Tkachuk, I would definitely give the edge to over Kadri. But then you have Mackenzie Weegar, that Calgary defense, is obviously a huge boost to their team. Jacob Markstrom in net, one of the best goalies in the league. I see Calgary getting 2nd there. And then 1st in the Pacific Division, I have the Edmonton Oilers. Again, I think it's going to be a battle here between the 2 Alberta teams. Probably 105 points for the Oilers, maybe 102 for the Flames. But the Oilers are getting the better of them, I think. After the Christmas break last year, they were the best or second best team in the NHL leading up to the playoffs. Obviously, they looked really good in the playoffs, so they got swept by the eventual Stanley Cup winners. Their biggest issue was goaltending last year. They solved that with Jack Campbell. In terms of defense, they have Brett Kulak coming back, who played well for them after they got him at the deadline. As well, they really keep Vander Kane, which is huge for them. He looked so good with the Oilers once he joined the team. Also, too, really curious to see how Dylan Holloway does. It's going to be his kind of first taste of the NHL. A lot of people have some high hopes for him. Of course, that team's led by McDavid and Draisaitl, 2 of the best players in the league. I think, Edmonton, if they're not 1, definitely probably 2 in the Pacific Division. Now, moving on, guys, to the other Western Conference Division, we're looking at the Central here. So, maybe one surprise here, I guess, would be who I have at 6. But first things first, I've got Arizona here at number 8. I mean, it's pretty clear they're tanking for Connor Bedard. You look at that roster, it's not any good. Goaltending's not great. Defense isn't great aside from Chychrun and Gostisbehere. Now they actually did just get Juuso Valimaki off waivers from the Flames, which I thought was a great waiver pickup. I don't think he's gonna push them over the edge or anything, but still good for their future. He can kind of rebound there with more ice time, more responsibility on the Coyotes. Forward group, it's basically Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, not much else. So yeah, I see not only the Coyotes gonna be the last in the Central, I think they're probably gonna be last in the NHL. Number 7 there, Chicago Blackhawks. Same kind of deal as Arizona, clearly tanking for Bedard. And just like the Coyotes, I not only see Chicago as the 2nd worst team in the Central, but the entire NHL. These teams are going to be so bad, especially, too, if Chicago trades away Patty Kane. I think he's the only guy in that forward group who I'm confident saying is going to have over 50 points this year. The rest of them, I don't know. You got Taves, Tyler Johnson, Domi, Athanasiou, maybe some younger guys, but I just don't see it. Defensively, Jones isn't bad. Same with Connor Murphy. The rest, though, is kind of rough. And then in goaltending, they got Peter Mrazek starting, who only ever looked good in Carolina with a stacked defense in front of them. So, someone in Arizona, I do not see this season going well for Chicago. Again, I think these 2 teams are going to be pretty terrible. And because of that, I think the rest of the Central teams are actually going to kind of pop off, getting to play these teams so much, kind of beat up on them. Unfortunately for Dallas Stars fans, I have you finishing just outside the playoffs. Obviously, I'm getting the 2 wild cards here to Central teams. even though Dallas is at 6 there, I think the gap between them and Chicago is huge. Like, it's so much bigger than the gap between them and Winnipeg, even though Winnipeg's making the playoffs. If I had to guess, Arizona's going to have, like, maybe 60 points. Chicago's got, like, 65, maybe 70. And then Dallas is already, you know, high 80s, low 90s, with Winnipeg in the low 90s, mid 90s. So about a 20-point difference there. Unfortunately for Dallas, they're in a pretty stacked Central Division. I think they have a good young goalie, Jake Onger. Their defense is solid, led by Heiskanen. Forwards are pretty good, but I wonder about Pavelski if he's getting older here. Can he continue to be that point-per-game player? Sagan and Ben haven't really been looking that great. It's costing them a lot of money. Robertson just got paid. Hintz is a pretty solid player. Gurianov, you know, didn't do much last year. They brought in Mason Marchment, who was a really good fourth liner last year for Florida. I'm curious how he'll do with the Dallas Stars. Wyatt Johnson, if he stays with the team, could be a player for Dallas. I'm kind of hoping he doesn't, goes back to the Spitfires. But again, yeah, Dallas is a good team. I just have them, you know, just missing. Literally, it was a 50-50 coin flip for me between them and Winnipeg. And honestly, I think the deciding factor is probably the fact Winnipeg has a better goalie, Connor Hellebuck. I think he's one of the top 3 goalies in the NHL. I'm just kind of putting my money on him. Defensively, I think Winnipeg, Dallas are pretty even. Obviously, Dallas has the better number 1 in Heiskanen, but in terms of the overall top 6, I think it's pretty even. Winnipeg, of course, some really good forwards there. Ehlers, Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler, if he can kind of bounce back here. Dubois, Perfetti, of course, coming in. I feel like the Jets' offense is good enough to at least get them a wild card spot. After that, number 4, Nashville Predators. So this was a weird one, too. I feel like Nashville's definitely going to slow down a little bit. Forsberg had a career year last year. Same with Matt Duchene. I don't really see that happening this year. But they bring in Ryan McDonough on defense, so that was a really nice add. They've also got one of the best goalies in the league, in my opinion, in Saros. And then, too, with that forward group, some young players that could step up. And Tolvanen, Cody Glass, Tomasino. So I still see them being a playoff team. After that, at 3, Minnesota Wild. So I definitely see them taking a step back. I don't think they're going to have like 113 points where they had last year. Ryan Hartman had a career year. Same with Zuccarello. Obviously, they lose Fiala. Now they have some young players coming in like Rossi. Boldy gained more ice time. I'm a little bit worried about Fleury and his age. Can he, you know, continue to play well? Even if everyone I just mentioned takes a bit of a step back, I still feel like they'll be in the 90-point range and should comfortably be in a playoff spot. After them, St. Louis Blues there at 2. Their team, I don't think lost anybody aside from Husso, and as long as Binnington can play like he did in the playoffs, which is solid goaltending, they should be fine. Of course, forward-wise, they are set. O'Reilly, Tarasenko, Robert Thomas, Kyrou, like Braden Shen. They're good up front. Buchnevich, defensively with Krug there, with Parayko. I feel like, you know, St. Louis for sure is a lock as a playoff team. They're going to miss now as soon as I said that. And then number 1 here, obviously, don't overthink it, the defending Stanley Cup champs, Colorado Avalanche. They did lose Kadri. They lost Ryan Murray. They lost Burakovsky, but they're still going to be a really good team. They lost Darcy Kemper, of course, who's a great starting goalie. But Georgiev, I think, with Francouz, should give them good enough goaltending. They brought in Evan Rodriguez on the cheap. Obviously, they kept the main core together with McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, Makar, which is kind of like the guys that are going to lead them kind of to the promised land here. So I still think Colorado's the best team in the Central. Now, moving over, guys, to the Eastern Conference, starting off with the Atlantic Division. I have the Toronto Maple Leafs there, you can see, winning the Atlantic. But before we get to that, last in the division is actually the team that just beat them tonight, the Montreal Canadiens. I'm a little bit late on this. I think like half the teams have played a game at this point. Obviously, it's just one game. It's pretty funny to me, but yeah, I still see Montreal getting last. Just if you look at their defense, you can look it up on Cap Friendly, NHL.com, Montreal's website. Their defense looks like an AHL defense. I just don't see it, you know, playing well enough through a full 82-game season for them to beat any of these teams above them on this list. The forward group's pretty solid. Jake Allen's an okay goaltender, but again, with that defense, I just don't see it happening. Number 7 there, Buffalo Sabres, obviously looked a lot better this year, unfortunately for them. The Atlantic Division is still pretty stacked. Like, I don't think Buffalo really makes any noise until kind of Boston and Tampa's cores really start to get older. Even though Buffalo's at 7 there, I don't think they're going to have an embarrassing season or anything. Unfortunately for them, though, their goaltending just not good enough, I think, to be a playoff team. Ottawa Senators there at 6. Similar idea to Buffalo Sabres. I don't think they get embarrassed. I think they're competitive. They probably finish somewhere like in the 80-point range, which isn't enough for a playoff spot. I think they'll have a lot of goals for, of course, bringing in DeBrincat and Giroux, but their defense is not very good. Goaltending-wise, I think they'll be okay once Talbot returns, even right now with Forsberg, but defense, it's better than Montreal's, but it's still not that great. Red Wings there at 5. I think Red Wings are going to be a much more improved team this year. All those free agency ads, we brought in Perron, we brought in Andrew Kopp, Ben Sherratt, Holy Mata, probably Dominic Kubelik, like so many guys. I forgot to mention too, Husso brought in to have that goalie tandem with Nedeljkovic, so I think we're definitely going to be a competitive team. ICS probably finishing with like 88 points, so that means we're, you know, in the hunt all year, but we do fall short. Now, this is probably the biggest shocker for some of you. This is definitely my hot take of the year. I have the Florida Panthers missing the playoffs. So They come close. They get number 4 there, but I have them missing. I have 5 teams making the playoffs from the Metro Division. Reason being, honestly, the biggest thing is just the loss of Mackenzie Weegar. You look at that defense, it's not great. It reminds me kind of Ottawa's defense. It's got one awesome number 1 in Ekblad, similar to Ottawa with Shabbat. After that, it is pretty average, if not below average. So Ekblad's had some injury issues. If Ekblad goes down at all for any significant amount of time, I'm hoping he doesn't, but if he does, there's like no way Florida makes the playoffs. And even if he stays healthy all year, I don't know if he can carry the rest of that defense. Also, too, in terms of the forward group, I feel like Kachuk isn't as big a point producer as Huberdeau. Anthony Duclair's out for the entire year. That's 30 goals gone from last season. They also lost Mason Marchment, who's like the best 4th line in the league in the NHL last year. I feel like there's somebody else, too, they lost that I'm forgetting. Goaltending-wise, Bobrovsky had a bit of bounce-back year. Even if he doesn't play well, I do think Knight's a good goalie, but again, I just look at their defense, and it does look like a playoff team's defense to me. Maybe they prove me wrong. Everyone I see has them as a playoff team, so I could be the dumb one here, but we'll have to wait and see. Next year, number 3, Boston Bruins. So in the summer, I thought Boston was going to miss the playoffs. Reason being, I thought Bergeron was going to retire. Didn't see Krejci coming back, and I thought Marchand and McAvoy were going to be out for a long time, at least till Christmas. As it turns out, Bergeron and Krejci are both back. I think Marchand's supposed to be back by American Thanksgiving. McAvoy might be back not too long after that. I feel like, with those guys coming back, Pasternak's healthy. They still got Hall. They got 2 really good goalies they can lean on. Boston should be a very solid team this year. So I definitely see them making the playoffs. Up next, number 2, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, it's pretty hard to bet against the team that's gone to the Stanley Cup final 3 straight years, winning it twice. Of course, they got the best goalie in the league there in Vasilevsky. They still got all their, main core pieces. Stammer, Kucherov, hopefully can stay healthy all year. Brain Point there, Alex Killorn, as well as Sorelli. On defense, of course, they still have Hedman, Sergachev, Chernak. So, the core is all there. They've always been really good at filling in those pieces with those guys like Hagel. So, I think Tampa Bay, again, are pretty much a lock to be a playoff team. And then finally, guys, number 1, Toronto Maple Leafs. This isn't a hot take. I don't think. I just look at their team. I think they're very, very solid top to bottom. I guess the biggest issue for them, obviously, would be goaltending. They lose Jack Campbell, but I like the fact that they brought in 2 guys. And again, with goaltending, it's so fluky. Just one of those 2 should be hot at some point. Ride the hot guy till he's not. Put in the other guy, and hopefully you can get decent enough goaltending, which they really didn't get in the second half of last year. Something a lot of people don't realize, they actually could have been even better last year. Now, hopefully for Edmonton's sake, they get the Jack Campbell of the first half of the season. We'll have to wait and see. But I feel like Murray definitely going to have a better season on Toronto. Samsonov's got something to prove after Washington doesn't even qualify him. And again, their defense, it looks solid to me. Riley, Brody, Giordano, Muzzin, Hole, Sandin. Offensively, I mean, you got the top 4 there. Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. It's a stacked team, in my opinion. So I've got Maple Leafs finishing 1 there. We'll see whether or not that happens. And then finally here, guys, in the Metro Division. So starting off at number 8, I think this is everybody's pick to get last in the Metro Division. Philadelphia Flyers. A bit of a dumpster fire right now, and the season hasn't even started. Couturier, I think the injury's not as bad as people thought, so that's a good thing. But Carter Hart didn't look good last year. Torts as the coach will be interesting. I'm actually a huge fan of Torts, but this team isn't great on paper. A lot of injuries to deal with. They lost the captain. Especially without Couturier, they really have no elite forward to lean on. Provorov's on a bad defenseman, but really no elite defenseman. D'Angelo's there. He's got offensive skill, but that's about it. Ristolainen's overpaid. They got some kind of aging, overpaid forwards there in Kevin Hayes, JVR, Cam Atkinson. We'll see what he does. I think Philadelphia is taking a step back this year, and I think they're going all out here for Connor Bedard. After them, guys, number 7, Columbus Blue Jackets. Of course, Johnny Gaudreau joining that team. I think he's definitely going to help them out. Him and Laine could be a sick duo, although Laine would have got injured tonight, which I'm just going to not factor in. Hopefully, it's nothing too serious. I just look at them. They really don't have great center depth. Defensively, they have Rowensky, and then the rest of the guys I'm not so sure about. Merzlikins isn't a bad goalie, but I think Columbus, similar to Anaheim, Seattle, is a team that's definitely still building for the future. I don't even think they see themselves as a playoff team. After them, you have New Jersey, who I have finishing at 6th. Now, I feel like they could be a dark horse team this year, maybe surprise some people and actually get into playoffs. I think it's really going to come down to just how good Jack Hughes does. A lot of people see him finishing close to 100 points this year. If he does that, I don't know, maybe he can kind of carry the Devils into the playoffs. Alexander Holtz would have to go off, I think, really produce scoring on Jack Hughes' wing. Palau would have to play like he did last year. Dougie Hamilton has to step up. John Marino, who they traded for. They have to get decent goaltending from one of Vanacek or Blackwood. So if everything goes right for them, I think, maybe they take a spot here from the Islanders, for instance, but my personal opinion, they finish a little bit shy. They're probably a team, again, finishing like in the mid to high 80s, which probably won't be enough for a playoff spot. Now, after the number 5 guys on the New York Islanders, now this is a team I feel isn't really built like any other than the NHL. Aside from Barzal, I feel like they don't really have any elite forwards, but they have really good depth. Defensively, they're super solid. They got one of the best, if not the best, goalie tandem in Sorokin and Varlamov. So they just play smart defensive hockey, lean on their good goaltending, and get decent production from their forwards. They should be back in the playoffs this year. They had to play like 17 road games in a row or something ridiculous to start the year, which didn't help them at all. They didn't do well during that. But then after that, they actually played pretty well. And I think they're actually on a playoff pace. So without that this year, I'm just kind of looking at the stats there. They made the Eastern Conference Final 2 in a row before last year. I think they get back into the playoffs. Number 4 there, Washington Capitals. Again, I don't really like betting against Crosby or Ovi. I think they're back in the playoffs. Even without Backstrom, they brought in Dylan Strome. They brought in Connor Brown to help his production. They got a solid starting goaltender now, Darcy Kemper, as long as he stays healthy, of course. John Carlson on D. When I look at their team, I feel like it's definitely a playoff team. Really not much more to say than that. Number 3, the New York Rangers, but it was a surprise team last year. But obviously, a big part of that, too, to Shesterkin just being an absolute beast. So even if he's not as good as last year, but he's still really good. That's going to help with the Rangers. Defensively, of course, they still have Norris Trophy winner Adam Fox as their number 1. I think, too, some of their young defensemen coming up like Condrey Miller really going to help them out. Forward-wise, they bring in Vincent Trocheck. Panarin's sick. You got to think one of, if not both, Lafreniere and Kakko kind of start to get it together here and show why they were picked 1 and 2 overall in the draft respectively. So kind of like Washington, when I look at the Rangers, I feel like they should be a playoff team. Number 2, Pittsburgh Penguins. As I mentioned with Ovi, I don't bet against Crosby. I don't think he's ever missed the playoffs, or maybe he has one time when he was injured or something, but basically, Pittsburgh makes the playoffs with Crosby, Malkin, Letang. They've been together for 17 years. I'm not betting against that trio. And then finally, guys, number 1, the Carolina Hurricanes. I can't believe I had them missing the playoffs last year. I don't know what I was thinking. I was definitely kind of overvaluing the couple losses they had. But they showed last year they're one of the best teams in the East, so I'm not making that mistake again. And I think they actually got better. Bringing in Brent Burns for virtually nothing, that's going to help with their defense so much. Once Pacioretty does return, probably not till like February at least, if not March, he can just give them some goal scoring. The rest of their team, I don't really think they lost anybody aside from Niederreiter, so the core's still there with Aho, Teravainen, Svechnikov, Jordan Staal, of course, very good two-way forward. I think Seth Jarvis is a nice young player on that team. And, of course, we can't forget Freddie Anderson, who's amazing last year. So if he plays anything like that again this year, pretty much no way Carolina isn't a playoff team. And, again, I actually could see them finishing first in the division. Now, after giving you guys my predictions there, quickly we're going to do a season sim in NHL 23. All right, guys, so first of the sim, first I want to show you all the teams' ratings. You can see they're actually pretty similar to what I predicted. Like the Sharks, for instance, worst team in the Pacific there. In the Central, Arizona and Chicago are the 2 worst teams. Atlantic here. Tampa Bay is the best. Montreal's the worst. Metropolitan, very, very equal. So, I mean, that makes sense. Philly is the worst there. Carolina's the best, but Metropolitan definitely looks to have the most competition. All right, guys, so just sitting through the trade deadline. Check out this blockbuster. Anaheim gets Ryan Ellis, who I guess is back and healthy now, which by February, maybe he actually could be. JVR, which is a big contract, a 3rd and a 4th for Pavel Mintyukov and King. Now, Mintyukov is a 10th overall pick, very good defensive prospect. And I guess if they're making this trade, Anaheim must be, a playoff team, which is kind of crazy. As in the first episode of my Montreal Canadiens franchise mode, they actually won the Stanley Cup. I don't know how Anaheim's doing so well in the sim. Wow, and check out this one, guys. Another blockbuster. Islanders get Perfetti. Winnipeg gets Polak, Mayfield, and Parise. So, I mean, immediately their defense is so much better. Parise there's a veteran. I don't know, that's crazy. All right, guys, so check this out. The playoffs have ended, and the LA Kings are Stanley Cup champions. Not a team I would have expected, obviously, in my playoff predictions. Didn't even have them in the playoffs. First overall pick there goes to Arizona. Jumps from 2-1 to beat out Chicago for Connor Bedard. I'm not sure how big the Regina Pats Arena is, with the potential that he's going from more fans playing in Regina to less in Arizona. Chicago at 2, though, could get, Michkov or Fantilli. Sharks 3, so that's actually pretty accurate. Montreal 4. Literally the 4 teams I said would be finishing the bottom of the league. Philly 5. Oh my god, this is actually... Okay, so aside from only winning the Cup, the bottom 5 teams were actually the bottom 5 teams I predicted. So that's good to see. A little bit of realism there at least. Not usually the case. Usually some good team ends up doing quite bad. So I'll show you guys the playoff tree here. Obviously the Kings, let's see their road to the Cup. They beat the Canucks in 7, Oilers in 6, swept the Blues, and then they beat the Leafs in 6. I mean, I think the Leafs can make the Stanley Cup final this year. You can see the Avs there got beat by the Blues. So in the West, every single team that made the playoffs we predicted, except for the Ducks, Kings, and Canucks. I instead had the Preds, Wild, and Flames. Over on the eastern side, let's see. So the Leafs swept the Buffalo Sabres. How did they get in? Lightning in 7, Penguins in 5. So in the East, all the teams I predicted, except instead of Florida and Buffalo, I had the 2 New York teams. Now, Florida I could definitely see making it. Buffalo would be pretty crazy, I think. We'll take a look here at the awards. So, President's Trophy there, Maple Leafs. I mean, if they're winning the Presidents, they're obviously winning their division, which is what I predicted. They had a pretty good year. Oviart Ross, I don't know about that. Along with the Hart Trophy, Adam Fox gets another James Norris, his second in 3 years. Also got the Lady Byng. You don't always see a defenseman winning that. Pretty cool. Slavkovsky wins the Calder, okay. I could see him doing that. Right now, I think my pick's probably Matty Beniers. He looked so good at the end of last year in like the 6 games he played for Seattle. Plus, he's going to be like their first-line center, so he just has a lot of, ice time to put up the points. Doughty Conn Smythe, that would be a comeback year for him. Would put all the haters, including me, to shame. Tristan Jarry there, Vezina Trophy. I mean, if he wins that, Pittsburgh's definitely in the playoffs. Lowest goals against, Murray Samsonov. I actually lowered Samsonov's rating to make it more realistic. And the Leafs still the lowest goals against. Kinzov there, Bill Masterton, I hope I said his name right. Buffalo coach Jack Adams, I think make the playoffs. I think it's well-deserved, although the Ducks were also in. So I think Dallas Eakins could have won it as well. Kopitar, Selke, Ovi, Ted Lindsay. All right, I'll take a quick look at LA here just to see if they made any changes or literally won the Stanley Cup with the team they have. They still got Peterson and Quick there in goal. Defense looks the exact same. Forward group here, they brought in Andrew Kopp from the Red Wings. Okay, that's not a bad ad. I wonder what we got back in return. Other than that, though, it's literally just their team. So, again, like, LA winning the Stanley Cup's definitely a big surprise. It's not, like, completely unrealistic, though, this year. And the fact that, like, the 5 bottom teams were, like, who everyone expects to be the 5 bottom team, hopefully is a good sign that we're going to have some pretty realistic sims this year. Also, too, guys are curious, I should show you the scoring leaders for the entire league. Kind of crazy. Ovi 108, McDavid 100 on high scoring. Only 2 guys there in the hundreds. Matthews 97 with 50 goals. DeBrincat pops off in the Senators. Fox had 92. Drew there 91. Geez, so the 2 new centers there and him and DeBrincat absolutely popped off. And the Sens still don't make the playoffs. Behind Fox there, Hedman, Barry 69. Hamilton Carlson there, D'Angelo McCarr. So yeah, guys, overall pretty happy with how that sim turned out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the sub button down below. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.